Hey there, and welcome to Work Dope, a podcast on the messiness and the potential of humans at work. I'm Linda Stacy, and I am a corporate sellout, haha, turned corporate innovator who thinks that working in corporate America doesn't have to completely suck. And I will say that it often does. By some stats, up to 80% of workers are unsatisfied at work. And the flip side, the paradox of this is that folks are expecting to get more and more out of work. People are looking to work for their meaning and to feel valued and to base their identities in some cases on their roles at work. And now, today, the pandemic and the Great Resignation, all of this has forced us to take an even closer look at the quality of life and what culture really means for people inside of organizations. I always want to say that I think that business is cool. I think that building things, that solving real world problems, which is what businesses and companies are created to do, that these are fundamental to the best parts of what it is to be human, to live out our human experience and our human potential is to create, to build, to be innovative, really. So a few things about this particular recording. This is my first interview/conversation episode, and it is with Steve Shama, who is a retired physician of dermatology, and he speaks professionally on many topics. I was really interested in talking to Steve when I heard that he has a talk and a workshop on how to deal with difficult people and look forward to it. This is a topic that comes up again and again with folks working in corporate environments. You know, they have a coworker that's maybe challenging or maybe an internal client who's especially challenging. So this is what initially drew me to asking him to be a guest. So we talk about this, but we got into many other topics as well. A few of those, he mentioned, what it means to live out loud. That's something that he likes to live by, a premise that he likes to live by. So we talked about what that means inside of corporate. How do we live out loud inside of corporate? What does it mean to have voice inside of corporate? We also talked about the importance of growing and maintaining a growing edge. So no matter what your profession, how do you have some kind of growth happening? And to be real, to be fair, this is why the challenge and the difficulty exists, whether it's in a human being or solving some other kind of problem. This is what allows us to grow. This is also what allows us to really understand what it is all about. And when we say it, that is, the meaning, the purpose, the why behind us being here as humans on the planet. I love especially how Steve represents living who he is meant to be in his essence, no matter what specific role he's in. And I really see Steve as he's a connector. He's a human full of curiosity and wonder, and he's a loving human. And he is that no matter what role, whether he's the physician, the boss, the speaker, the partner. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Welcome, Steve Shama. I am really excited to have you on today to the podcast Work Dope. This podcast is all about discovery, being openness and conversation, and this time to connect I really value. So thank you for being here today.
My pleasure, Linda. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I am going to say a few things about your background that are quite impressive, and then maybe link it a little bit to some of the themes that I see as part of Work Dope. But for the audience, I want to say that I met Steve just a few weeks ago through a speakers association that we're both a part of. Very impressed by Steve and his background and his come from, just his tone. There's just kind of a loveliness that he exudes. And I think that his role on the planet is likely to pull that out of other people. But from this impressive career, I see that you started kind of an industry, right? In the National Institute for Occupational Safety, and then also at the NIH early on. So I'm going to ask you something about that in a bit. And then later got your master's of public health and did your residency at Harvard and also taught at Harvard. And then, later in around 2010, really kind of retired from life as a dermatologist and went more into speaking at that point. So that's kind of a very broad stroke overview. What else would you add to that?
My background is that I started off in medicine and finished medical school in 1970, and then roamed around a bit within medicine, did some research and things like that, and then ultimately settled into being a dermatologist for a 30-year career, which ended in 2010. I was old enough to retire at that point in time, but throughout my career, even as a physician, I was doing professional speaking. I love to get up on the platform and to speak my piece, to review what I've just seen the day before, the month before, the year before, and then to have a conversation with an audience, even though they may not be involved in the conversation from the point of view of it being two-way. I truly believe it's always a two-way conversation, whether you're doing a keynote or a workshop. So it's always been fun to kind of talk about the things that I think about throughout my entire life. And professional speaking gives me that forum in a very lovely way.
Did how did it initially get started? Were you asked to speak? Did you volunteer to speak? Was it in an industry or a professional conference? How did it begin?
I just as you started talking, I just started to smile and almost would have started to laugh. And the point is, how did I get to speak? I don't know. It's just like I couldn't not speak.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what I mean. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I remember some people who teach acting, and after a few semesters of working with an acting teacher, the student comes up to the acting teacher and say, "Do you think I should be acting?" And the answer from the acting teacher is, if you have to ask the question is no.
Mm.
So the answer is, I just simply have to get up on the platform. And it probably started off when I realized it was in high school, when I thought that things could be run even better than they are. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started to run for president of the high school. And fortunately enough, I won somehow. And then the rest is history. I just get up when I have a question, when I have a thought, when I have a curious moment, and then to voice it and then get involved in a conversation.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And one of the things that I endeavor to get at in the podcast and work dope is helping people see what's possible in careers and the fluidity of careers. And I think by and large that younger generations are thinking more that they don't have to stay in a role for forever, for many, many years. And I think that's great. You have been doing this for a long time, kind of this fluidity, this transition did it all seem kind of easy and natural? Did you ever feel like, I got to get out of this, like this cannot be the thing for me? Or curious about that.
Yeah, I love that question also. I'm chuckling here, so keep on making me chuckle. Um, yeah, the answer is, I've always picked things that have made me able to express myself. Like medicine is a profession, is a calling, whatever you want to call it, that makes me connect with people. And so I jokingly say, or casually say, I dermatology is what I did. It wasn't who I was. Truly am a connector. I want to connect and have a conversation with people, and dermatology is the way I did it. But professional speaking is another way. But if you were a mechanic, and putting together a car, you might talk to that person about, isn't it amazing how this car works? Or let me suggest a way of keeping your car out of this, shop, so it runs even better. So I'm in terms of conversation, and I would suggest that people who are much younger than I am simply look at what their choices are in life, and to say, this is a means to an end, or this is the means. I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, but I'm also going to play with other kinds of things in my spare time. And I think play, Linda, is one of the biggest things I've gotten involved in. Respectfully playing with science, respectfully playing with hobbies, respectfully playing with professional speaking or anything else. I like to play, to wonder, to be curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think play is a great approach. I've considered it a bit of a way to approach the big game of life, if you will. And again, not in a flippant or slight type of way, but that there's strategy, that there's some days, you make the touchdown or whatever that thing is, and other days you're kind of, backing up or getting knocked down. And just that just the wonder of it all. You expressed that in an earlier conversation, kind of the wonder in an approach to things. And I wonder myself, like, what was the parental influence for you? What did your parents do? And like, either by modeling or maybe the anti-modeling, or to the extent that you're willing to share, like what you kind of witnessed or observed at home when you were young, and how that influenced the man you became?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that, and I'm saying, well, my parents really didn't influence me in a specific way, like become a doctor or become a professional speaker. But I think that I grew up in a loving family,
Mm.
and that was basically it. And love gives you permission to be, in a sense, independent of other people for the kinds of things that you see in the world and want to voice. You don't have to look to someone else and say, hey, how is this? Is this important in my life? You kind of know it because you've been ingrained in that love. And I realize that other people have not grown up into totally loving and functional families,
Mm.
and everyone has problems in their families. But the bottom line is, if someone loves you, whether it's a grandmother or a grandfather or a sister or a brother, and they just inherently give you who you are as a person, then you're on your own after that. I mean, you could be curious, you could be wonder, new word, full. People say, hey, this is wonderful to meet you. And the answer is, yeah, they're feeling wonder. They're full of wonder when they're meeting you. And that's lovely to feel. And again, in all the things we discuss today, Linda, is the fact that there's no ego. And I mean, how can I say that? You can't profess humility, but there's no ego in this. I mean, I could be some people who are much younger than I am won't remember the Lone Ranger. It was a character on television who always had a mask on, because if he would reveal his identity, some of the bad guys might push him off, and kill him. Mm-hmm. And so, but he's always doing good for the town, but no one ever knew who he was. Mm-hmm. Well, the little boy in me is that Lone Ranger. I want to do good things. I want to see things. I want to talk about things, but no one really has to know my name, so to speak. And I like that feeling. In a previous conversation, we discussed the quote from Emile Zola, who's an historian. And he said, if you ask me what I came into this world to do, I will tell you, I came to live out loud. Mm-hmm. And that's me. Steve mm-hmm. Shama is a guy who looks at the world and has to voice it in some way. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to this podcast, and I think it's absolutely lovely, Linda, that you do these kinds of things, that you find out how you want to live out loud. You have a place, you have a voice in this world. And it's so sweet and so innocent to say that you see something in a unique way, in a very special way, not in a better way than someone else, but in a different way, in a special way, and you're unique. And then you voice it in some way. What better way of living your life,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a couple things you said that I want to pick up on it. Just to say that, that the fact, what I was picking up when you were saying that you came from a loving family, and that any source of love, ultimately it sounded like that kind of built there's a confidence behind that. It kind of, that's kind of what was coming across, a sense of confidence. And you also acknowledge that not everyone grows up in a very loving environment. And I know you've probably had employees and staff, over the years. Were there times when it was obvious to you that an employee was kind of lacking, or needed a little bit more? I'm curious your perspective on this.
Yeah, so you're talking about when I had my private practice in dermatology.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That's the kind of thing that would have. I want to make one comment, that when you are loved, you don't judge yourself. If you have inherent rich love in you, then the kinds of things you say, you don't have to kind of halt and pause and wonder, is it okay to say these kinds of things? Because you inherently, you're the best judge of yourself, and you don't judge yourself because you love yourself. And again, that's, when I say love myself, it's not like, oh, I'm the greatest person in the world and I love and everyone else isn't important, but you have an inherent good feeling about who you are. Now, with regard to employees, I always would talk to them. And whenever I talk to just about anybody, I engage in perhaps a little bit of empathy. And I look at them and I say, I wonder I wonder the good parts of them. I wonder what their life is like. And I see and look at their smile. And from their smile, I immediately connect with them as a person. So I've done that probably with everyone, not just employees. And I always like to say that I work with someone rather than they worked for me.
Mm.
I don't like people working for me. It's
Mm-hmm.
I like to work with people, and ultimately I'm the boss, so I can tell them what I want to do. But I also hopefully am listening to them so that we can make whatever group that we're part of even better than it is. And so they're part of it. I've loved them to make suggestions for me, to me, about how to make my private practice even better than they are, even better than it is. And I think that's it's been always a fun. It's never been a work environment for me when I had my private practice. It was always an environment in which we opened the door every morning at 8 o'clock and we closed it in a sense at 5. And in between, we had visitors, not necessarily broken people with broken skin, but people who visited us, and we try to make their lives a little bit better by the time that they left. And importantly, I left myself open to make my life better because they visited me.
Mm-hmm.
You
What a
know?
fantastic perspective. So, and this, I feel like this is a little disjointed, but I'm going with the things that have kind of struck me. You mentioned living out loud, which I've heard in other contexts too.
Uh-huh.
Of course, in previous conversation with you, but also, other places in the world. Even what you said just a moment ago about judgment, and that if you love yourself, there's that I struggle with self-judgment. And I know a lot of other humans struggle with judgment because it's my opinion. And I am going to be talking to therapists and other people who have more expertise in this, that that when we're outwardly harsh and judgmental, externally, there's usually an internal thing going on there. So I think that a lot of the population struggles with negative, it's like poor, it's a negativity that's kind of coming from within, and then it's exuding without. Yeah, and it seems to me that one of your primary roles as a human and on this planet is to expose and elevate. But anyway, speak to that if you will.
Yeah, no, I want to float away the judges. Look, do I not judge what I do and what I say? The answer is yes. But bottom line, when I put my head on the pillow at night, I feel good about the day. And if I don't, I try to make it better the next day. I don't judge in a sense, although I suppose most people, if you were to hear a story about me hesitating about something, it would be a judgment. But it's not a harsh judgment because, again, I try to look for the innocence in what I've done as opposed to the harshness of what I've done, and then try to make myself better the next day. Am I perfect? The answer is absolutely no. There's no question about that. But we were talking before about this, not during this particular conversation, but before, about one of the sessions that I have done for 25 years on how to deal with difficult people and look forward to them. That's the operative part. How to deal with difficult people and look forward to them. And the idea is that one of the major themes is thank you for being such a pain. Thank you for coming into my world and bothering me in the sense that I had to think about what I do or what other people do or why I'm bothered by you, and then to change my way to learn something about me. So that's the way I learn about things. I think about the world, the things that bother me, and wonder why they bother me and learn about them. And so, the idea would be that God or the spirit world or the universe sends difficult people to us to make us learn about life, and that would be it. And so that's a bit of a humble way of looking at things.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big category, a big topic, and last year I had 3 speaking engagements in the October-November time frame, and then I've kind of been on a pause with speaking, and the podcast has naturally really been born, and what I was beginning to get to some of these themes in the speaking world. And one of the last groups that I spoke to was a group that works in police precincts. They are the people that pretty much run the offices, for local police precincts. And they deal with a lot of difficult people and people who may have mental illness, people who might have, major scarcity things, financial scarcity, other things going on in their lives. And um, this is a tough topic to bring up for for individuals who are in certain types of professions,
Yeah.
and the approach. I'm curious, since you've done this as workshop and speaking topic. I was reading the description, and you said that you really would bring humor to it. And I don't know if you've had really ways of really kind of inspiring people to reflect in the most loving, kind way.
Yeah.
It's a big, messy topic, but what would you have to say to that?
Look, if you look at it at the most essential way, or the universal way of looking at what we're here for in this life, is to figure out what it is all about, to figure out what life is all about. I think that's what we're here for, why we're alive. And so if you want to find out what it is all about, you have to be challenged, not in severe ways, but in many different ways. And every religion believes the same kind of thing. Do not dismiss the messenger. Do not dismiss the piece of life that challenges you in small ways and in large ways, and learn from it. So you need to be curious about kinds of things like that. And so if, for the example of people who work in, was it police stations? Is that what
essentially. Yep.
Right. And when I give the talk, or when it's a role-playing session for 3 or 4 hours, I say that this conversation that we have now, the workshop, the role-playing workshop, can work for mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and husbands and wives and children and dogs. But it does not work for cats, because cats do not care. They just exist. And the other thing is that it is a very gentle workshop. It's looking for gentleness in the world. And so when you're dealing with people who are relatively rational but upset about something and challenging you, it can work. And all the kinds of things that we'll hopefully talk about during this conversation, the themes, can work. But it does not work for people who are mentally ill, or who are psychotic, or who are physically aggressive. That's when you call the cops.
Right.
And so, but there are 7 billion people who probably don't fit into the category of pathologic, mentally disturbed to the point that you simply can't have a conversation with them, or who are physically aggressive. So it can work with many, many people. So the idea is that when I used to work in emergency rooms after my medical school training, people would come in with all kinds of things. Some people were physically disturbed by things, and other people were mentally ill. I wouldn't assume that I couldn't talk to someone. I would assume that I could talk to anyone, until the conversation revealed that they just weren't simply going to understand what I'm talking about, because they weren't capable of it, capable mentally, because they had a mental problem. And I say this with all due respect, but there are certain people that are having some episode where you can't connect with them. And when you can't, it doesn't work. This, what I'm talking about today, and however will wander, will not work. But most people are there. They're just disturbed to the point that you have to calm them down in some sensitive, kind of respectful way. And I think that's what we'll be talking about with your scenario. If someone is just disturbed, they still can hear. And so what I would do is, if someone were in a disturbed state and were coming to me and really kind of threatening me, but not physically, I would just say, hey, can I ask you to sit down? And I would say it in tones that are very soothing and very respectful. And hopefully they'll hear me, my tonality, and kind of calm down a bit so we can have a conversation. If after a few minutes of reasonable conversation, they're simply not hearing me, I realize, this is not going to work, and I need to call the psychiatrist in, which is what I would do in an emergency room. I was doing triage. If I could handle something, I would, and if I couldn't, but I couldn't just approach the fact that I'm going to just call someone now. This guy looks like he's crazy, so call the shrinks. I would always think about it as a challenge. Can I make this person better, or can I connect with the person? And I think that's the way you want to engage in difficult situations. And then see if you can sort things out to the point where you can make it better. And that's, I think, what my life is all about also. I'd like to engage in conversations with people so that we can make our life better, and learn about it. What's it all about? Without challenging people, I'd be sitting on a rocking chair, learning nothing for the rest of my life. And that's not the way I hope to go out,
And I'm going to press a little bit. So if we have someone in a work environment, a team environment, that it maybe is a colleague who, we might have some, I don't know, ability to work with, or to understand, or to appreciate that what this person is bringing to your life. And then I also think of perhaps extended family, in-laws, people who are kind of in your life that some would prefer that these people maybe are not in their lives, or that is there opportunity in all of this? I would ask you. I mean, I'd like to believe that there is, but I am challenged by these things. I personally am challenged by these things. And again, and I also have to say something about myself. I am learning in this podcast. I am learning the rest of my life. Right. And I so much want to believe that there's, the positive opportunity potential for everything. But at the end of the day, I'm tired sometimes by certain types of interactions. I'm exhausted. I want to go into a self-protection mode because I can't take it anymore, or something like this. So, I mean, these are legit things. And I'm curious if any of if there were actual, there's strategies, but coping mechanisms, and if you've had, challenging people that at some point you'd like to write off,
Right. And that's very, very important. That's correct. Not that they're physically aggressive, and not that they're mentally
Correct.
not
Right.
to have a conversation, but they're just people who bother you to the point, and they're a messenger from the universe. So that they're a messenger, but you choose not to interact with them. You have my permission. You have your own permission to say, I don't want to talk to this person. I'm not going to engage with them today. Because today I got too many hassles in my life. And so permission to not engage, which is very, very important. It's a basic kind of premise in the workshop and the way I live my life. Do I want to engage with this person today, even though I could learn something from it? So I choose not to engage. That's perfectly fine. The other thing is, if they're not being respectful of a conversation, you can not get upset, but just say, hey, this is not the best time for us to talk. Perhaps tomorrow, perhaps never. But I thank you very much for the conversation. And then just, again, that's engaging a bit, but not really basically having a conversation with them, and just saying, I choose not to do that. You can do it silently, or you can do it overtly to them. So that's part of it. But you realize that you cannot dismiss all the people in the world.
Absolutely.
But the times when you just simply want to rest, you're overwhelmed, and that's not the time to use any of the kinds of things that we'll be talking about. Simply not. Take a rest. And I don't engage. Sometimes I'm just not feeling I wake up on the wrong side of the bed, so to speak.
Right.
And when you do that, it's not the time to learn. Today is a day when you're not going to learn very much.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I think what I was going to say before is that I've only come to really understand that challenge and difficulty and these things that I've traditionally wanted to run away from, that they're my growing edge, that and that I'm going to be okay. It's like I have to continue to tell myself, you're not going to die. I mean, I know, like, that's the worst, but that you can engage, you will engage. And I have to thank my husband for that. My marriage has been one of the most challenging aspects, and he's willing to engage, and in ways that I was not taught. And so my instinct still is to retract, even though I'm consciously very aware that discomfort is where it's at.
Let me tell you some of the themes of here, Linda, and I thank you for being open about that. You mentioned growing edge, and that's another way of looking at what I'm talking about. Thank you for being such a pain, because you're teaching me something about the environment, my world, and what it is all about. It is being challenged, but to the point where you can still be engaged. You don't have to crawl back into one's shell. So you're always curious. Why is this person? Why am I feeling this way towards this person? Or what's going on with this person? So there's a curiosity, not being critical. Right? That's very, very important, because critical is kind of pushing the person away, but not allowing you to engage in any kind of conversation with them. It's like, this person is broken. How can I fix them? It's a judgment. And I try to stay away from judgment as much as possible, but we all need to judge sometimes. It's part of humans. Need is perhaps a harsher word, but we all need to engage in judgment. I don't know why it's necessary. See, if you're curious without judging, That's what I think the healthiest way of life is all about. The problem is that when we engage in a conversation with somebody, let's assume a political issue, without mentioning anything specific, or the way someone is living their life, you might add the filter of criticism, and that's not it. But be curious. I wonder why this person believes that candidate would make a better,
Right.
senator. Or I
Absolutely.
wonder why this person wanted to chop down that beautiful tree that I adored, that I've adored for many, many years in my neighborhood. I wonder why this person takes care of their children in that way. I wonder. It's curious without being critical. A very, very important thing. And as humans, I think that the judgment comes out periodically, but I want to float the judge away as
Yeah.
much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that linked with the theme of innocence, and that
Yeah.
even to ourselves and to those that we're close to. I think sometimes I can be very harsh with myself and with people who are close to me on my work team and other, because I'm afraid of how we're going to be seen, which goes back to the judgment. But really, ultimately, if we can all just be a little gentler and not, we're doing the best we can here, right? And just there is some innocence for all of us. I want to say something else about the living out loud. It's been my experience that some people in work environments and corporate environments don't feel that they can be expressive in the workplace, and which I've worked on it. I've definitely evolved over the last 20, 25 years. And I also think, and you've mentioned that it's really important that there's maybe something happening outside of how we're making a living or the means to the end. And I really think that's important, not just from like how we're growing as human beings. Yes, hobbies and play, if it's sports or whatever, but also other things that help us be more of who we're meant to be. But what would you say to living out loud inside a corporate workspace? Do you have any perspective on that? Not that I don't know if any of your experience has really been in that type of environment.
Yeah, I have not worked in the corporate world. I mean, I was always in private practice of medicine. So what I was saying is that, I am the captain of my ship. Of course, no one is really the captain of the ship, because people who gave me insurance policies to bill, they were working for Blue Cross Blue Shield, rather than they were working for them. But Blue Cross Blue Shield was ultimately paying me, or Medicare was paying me. So if Medicare decided to pay me less, I was not necessarily the captain of my ship.
Yeah.
But in terms of working in a corporate environment, I think that everyone wants to have some kind of a voice. Everyone wants to be appreciated and understood. And so if you allow for that, I always told my office staff, I said, my door is always open. The traditional person who's in charge saying, my door is always open. And so, but during some conversations, sometimes when things were really going crazy, they would say, Steve, I simply couldn't tell you those kinds of things. And I said, it's been months on your mind. I know you said the door is always open, but I didn't want to open the door. And so even I, who I hope was very, very open and appreciative of people and supportive of people, they didn't get it. That I really, really, really wanted to know how they were feeling. And I think that's an important thing. Keep on saying it during meetings. And it's not what you say. One of the expressions I use in the workshop is, it's not what you say, it's where it's coming from. It's not what you say, it's where it's coming from. The idea meaning that I can say, I'm sorry, everybody, that this is happening to us. I'll make it better. And, I'm using particularly perhaps harsher tones, but I could also be very gentle, saying, I'm sorry, everybody, that this is happening. I'm going to try to make it better. And the tonality, everyone might hopefully believe the second time that I said it right now, is that I'm coming from a place of, I really, 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 really want to make a difference, rather than I'm just spouting forth what most employers might say to people, saying, hey, we've gone through rough times, I'm going to make it better. I'm not believable. And I think that believability is the essence of what all of us have to tap into on a regular basis. If we really feel something, we have to tell people, you are great, rather than the perfunctory one saying, you're great, oh, good, good job. But rather than push it, just say, hey, I just saw you doing that, and that was wonderful. That's great.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Leave them alone after that. Let them enjoy the moment as opposed to saying paragraphs of how great they were.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's all necessary.
Yeah.
And sometimes a simple smile to someone without making any words out of it can say, you're just looking at someone and they just done something. And you look at them and they look at you and you just smile at them. They got it. No words, no sentences, no written reports. No, you're on report for doing something wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So many opportunities. We're missing it, Linda. I mean, we as all of us, I'm missing it,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone else is missing the moments, the pauses, the smiles that we're missing. And you mentioned that sometimes you like to pause every once in a while to think about things, and all of us do. But the pause can be a moment. It can be a fraction of a second, or it can be a minute. I think that we're missing those beautiful moments in life when we just want to smile and say how beautiful it is, but how harsh it can be. And what can I learn about life today that will make me even better, sweeter? And the expression, I'm thinking about this right now, Linda, that I've used, I want to live my life one moment short of a tear.
Mm-hmm.
I want to touch myself emotionally and other people so that they're almost ready to say, what you said was just so wonderful. I think I might even cry. And the answer is pull it back just before the tear and live your life that way. Live your life in conversation so that you're listening to what they say and see the innocence and the beauty in it. And then say, wow, holy mackerel. When you have a religious experience and all of a sudden you're brought down to your knees and you're almost in tears because something universal, something essential has just happened and you want to cry and sometimes you do cry, pull it back just a bit and live your life in that wonder, new word, full way every single day, every single minute of your life. Now, look, I can use hyperbole and perhaps I'm a little bit like that and Pollyannic at this point in time. But I think that in our conversation, there is truth to that. And more likely than not, people who are living otherwise physically healthy and mentally healthy can say, I'm wasting my time worrying about things that could be and just forgetting about appreciating the beauty of springtime or of summer amidst all of the things that are happening in the world as we're talking. You got to take a break. You got to pause and appreciate what life has given you and then go on and then just go on. But the business, I come back to that Emile Zola quote. If you ask me what I came into this world to do, I will tell you, I came to live out loud. Steve Shama cannot be quiet. My wife, when she first met me, she was, we met on a dessert line during a party, and she realized, I looked nice, and so she started to talk to me, and then she brought me over to her friends, and one of the things she said to me afterwards, she said, "This guy does not shut up. He does. He keeps on talking." And she's saying that 45 years later.
I love the expression, I won't say it the same. I didn't write it down, but just short of the tear, living in that moment. And I have to say that I believe that that's where I want to be also. And I think it's where I'm inclined to be. And that I have felt so empty in a corporate space, feeling like it's so lacking. But in the short few years, it's been more like, I think it's my role to bring that there. It's like I'm expecting that others are going to kind of create the juju to allow me to do that. And it's like, no, I think I'm the one that's supposed to be there to create that. And again, and that I too have to watch the whole humility thing. But if it, that's where the richness and the profound experience of life is. And I don't think it has to be absent from some of these environments that have traditionally felt very absent or, lacked the humanity, the feeling of humanity.
Yeah. One of the things that I've realized in a corporate environment that I walk through or heard about is that there tends to be this impersonal kind of thing.
Yeah.
There is the corporation and the corporation takes care of people, so it makes them more efficient in what they're doing to serve the corporation. And my expression is efficiency has no soul. efficiency has no soul. And
Mhm.
so you can be very efficient. And I happen to be a very efficient and a conscientious person, as I think many people believe they are. But there's a time to be efficient, and then there's a time to caress and to love and to appreciate, and to care about,
Mhm.
care for people. And I think that that's what we're missing in modern day society. We're taught to be as efficient as we can, to do the
Mhm.
task in as little time as we can, and to make as much money as we can doing as little,
Right.
being efficient. And again, there's no soul in that. There's no caring in that. And what you have to do is add that back to it. So if you say to someone, "We had a great week," like you have a meeting of everyone at the end of the week and say, "What a great week this was. We made a lot of money and we got a lot of people. But how about adding this? We made a lot of money and we helped a lot of people. We made them happy
Mhm.
and we enrich their life in some way." Add that soul back to the efficiency part of things,
Mhm.
so that people realize that although the corporation is here to make money for everybody, it's not really the ultimate of this corporation was not established to make money. It was to make the world a better place.
Mhm.
Bingo. All
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, yeah, I'm so conflicted about. I do feel that there are a lot of business creators out there in the world that are coming from that place, and sadly, I've also though been exposed to a lot of people who want to build something that they can sell in 4 years to private
Yeah.
equity investors. And I've talked to people who work for those companies, and it's the worst possible environment because money is the only thing. It's just
Yeah.
it's very disheartening. So I love that your door was open for your folks. And I've certainly heard that from leaders in environments where I've worked too. And sometimes I've even taken them up on it. And I think that sometimes folks are not sure what to expect from that. Like, what does that mean? Like, what am I bringing to the person running this office or the person, running this establishment? Like, and does it need to be useful? Like, and I mean, I really think that folks on the front lines might be thinking, what should I expect from this? Or what's the point of this? Some folks don't want to go where it's difficult or too emotional, just because they've got other things going on. But I'm curious to know, like, what's the best case scenario for when someone takes advantage of an open door policy?
Yeah, no one's ever asked that point because I figured it's obvious, but it isn't so obvious. The thing is that let's assume someone says, I say to my office staff, my door is always open. Please come in if you have any questions or concerns or things of that sort. Because, and they realize from my office meetings that this office is not to take care of problems necessarily. It's something greater than that. And if you understand what I'm really here for, Steve Shama as a dermatologist, what I'm really here for, not just to take care of broken parts in the skin, that's important, but to make people happier and to teach them something about the world, then that's what we're really here for, so that any one of my staff could do that. A teacher of how to make people even happier and more content in the world. And so my door is always open for suggestions. How can we take care of people's skin even better? But even better than that, how do we get closer to the theme of why Steve Shama and the dermatology practice that he's developed is all about, what it's all about? And so some people would, if they really heard about that, said, "Steve, you know what? We're running out of coffee and cake that you normally have in the waiting room. Is it okay if I bring in some of my own cake?" And I would almost come close to a tear because they were saying they get it. We are opening up our home to people,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to make them comfortable, and so that they're not fearing coming into the doctor's office. Everybody knows how to make a home a loving home. And that's what it was all about. So all of a sudden, I was defining my practice not to take care of broken parts of the skin, but to bring people into a home in which we made them better. It was a home. That was one of the themes. And I learned from so make them important to you.
Mm-hmm.
They are important to you, but they have to do important, not just in the efficiency part of it, but also in terms of the theme of why you established this. I agree. Most entrepreneurs are looking to develop a company and to flip it in 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be that. One of the expressions I was thinking about when you were starting to talk about this was, when people are so miserable in their job and they realize that they're not beyond not happy, they're miserable.
Yeah.
The expression that I would use is, ladies and gentlemen, if you feel that way about your job, it's time to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just pause, just like you were talking about the pause.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea would mean when you say it so much, they realize that they're miserable,
Mm-hmm.
but they're making money. They're making a lot of money, but they're
Mm-hmm.
miserable. Focus on the miserable and say, it's time to say goodbye. And then if someone said, Steve, but I can't say goodbye because I got a big, I got a big house now and I got a big car and I'm caught up into this rat race now because I can't get out of it. And I'll say, okay, fine. Then let's deal with that now. But at least you realize that you're miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And when you connect with the miserable part of you and say, I'm not supposed to be miserable, then you can get yourself out of it. But as Tony Robbins, the peak performance coach would say, when the pain is greater than the gain, people will change. But there's got to be some pain in it. And I don't mean pain, but just something that throws you off a bit when you want to reestablish the balance in life and perhaps push it up in terms of happiness. Some people don't believe they should be happy.
Right.
And you have to give them a hug, a verbal hug or a physical hug, and say, it's okay. You're talking to a little girl, a little boy in them who is frustrated and doesn't know how to get out of it. All of us, even no matter 70, 80 years of age, there's a still little boy and little girl in us that is hurting. And someone has to give us a verbal or physical hug to say, hey, it's okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, all of this is so rich. There's the expression, wherever you go, there you show up, or something like that. And I've struggled with this a little bit with the idea around work and jobs and people being dissatisfied in the workplace. And that to some extent it's, how can we change right inside of it? Do we have to escape the environment? Because it ultimately, is there something internally happening? I mean, I don't think there's a clear answer to this, but I also don't think that, I think sometimes people escape too soon, maybe, and that there could be things to be learned right inside of it. And that I'm just curious about that. And I'm going to continue to kind of poke on that, because I feel like my own mindset has shifted a lot inside of the same exact job and inside the same exact organization. So it's a fascinating point.
Let me take off from what you just said. And I hear you and I understand you. So what you're basically saying is, look, if your job is miserable, why don't you just quit and find something else? Easy enough. I'm not necessarily easy enough, but that's what you should be doing. And I might not be saying quit so easily. When you're so miserable, it's time to say goodbye. But until you've reached that misery index, and all of us have it, where you're so miserable, you're coming home and nobody loves you, you don't love yourself. But in between, there are opportunities, and that's the thank you for being such a pain. It can be people or situations, so that you can learn something from it. So you join an organization and it sounds great. They're paying you well, lots of free time within the organization to develop things. And then all of a sudden you realize that there's some inherently bad things about this organization. So you say, you know what, I'm quitting. This is not my place. But wait a second, Linda is saying, wait a second, but what about the other things? Maybe you could learn something about the situation and make yourself better. And the answer is absolutely yes. I don't want to quit just because you're feeling miserable. I want you to learn something along the way. I want me to learn something along the way. And that goes for life itself. Someone comes to you and you just don't like them. Say, I choose not to engage and I'm out of here. At a certain point in time, every day, there are things that throw you off. It's time to say, time to be curious. And actually, we didn't talk about this, but time to just shut up and listen. Somebody is saying something you don't like, just keep quiet for just a moment. Listen to what they're talking about. And then, very, very important, get into their world. Have a bit of what the word is, empathy. Can you imagine what that person is saying or doing to have to spout those words about a politician, or about cutting down a tree, or about raising children in that particular way? Where are they coming from? You're curious about that. Then you actually enter their world and say, aha, I'm hearing what they're saying. I can feel what they're saying. That's true empathy. And all of a sudden, you're in their story, not just listening to their story. That's sympathy. I'm hearing your story. Yep, I'm hearing it. But empathy would be, I'm in your story. I'm feeling what you're feeling, and now I get it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's very, very important.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I wanted to share from my own experience in at the same job that I've had almost 20 years now, that um, I've learned that there were a lot of stories I was telling myself. I was, creating a lot of things that probably weren't actually happening. And this is out of like self-protection, and this could be happening for a lot of people. And when I have been able to kind of back up a little bit and be more neutral and understand my gifts and what I want out of work, what I want out of life, it's been much easier. And you also said the thing about, this people don't expect to be happy, or they don't know that it's a thing for them. And I have
Yeah.
found too that there's a lot of people who, and I mean, I am this, I have been this, I feel like I've shifted out of it, but how much can we ever really let go of these things? I just like declaring something that you want for yourself, and part of that is, what makes a fulfilling, a satisfied, life, and then cultivating it. And I do think there's still a thing out there that, life happens to you, and that leads to, unfortunately, some of this malaise. So
Yeah.
much there.
Yeah. I'm thinking as you were talking about, everybody has a different point of contentedness.
Mm,
I can't say you'll be content if you do this, and this. Everyone has a different point. And I think, again, one has to go back to, what's life supposed to be all about for me? And I
mm,
truly believe you're supposed to be happy. I
mm,
don't think life is supposed to make you so unhappy, and that would be the challenges, that you're always miserable all the time, or near misery, that you enjoy it. And there are many people who believe that life is not supposed to be happy. You're supposed to work hard, and it's
mm,
supposed to hurt. And I think, again, they need some kind of a verbal or physical hug to say, hey, it's okay to be happy, to
mm,
smile, to
mhm,
appreciate things without necessarily someone saying, hey, you did a great job over here. Just do it for the sake of doing it. And I think that we need to give each other permission. One of the things I would do in a corporate environment, so that people start to talk to each other and appreciate what's going on beyond the corporate goal of making money and making more widgets, as the
right.
expression goes, is for us to get together as a group, maybe once a week, maybe once a month, and to tell a story.
Mm,
And you'd say, well, what kind of story? Any story. Just tell me
mhm,
a story in 2 minutes that impressed you, or that
mm,
touched you. That would be even a better word, about your life. Something you saw, something you wanted to do. And even if it's just basically, I'd love to take a cruise on a ship, and just imagine, being fed all the time, and then say, why would you want to do that, rather
mhm,
than what you want to do, but in addition, why? And everyone realizes over a period of time that the why will come. Well, why do you want to take that cruise? Why do you want to sit, and have a beautiful dinner? And someone might say, well, I just need a rest. I'm working so hard. I work myself so hard, and I
mhm,
need to be pampered. And all of a sudden, the people who are executives in that firm will say, you know what? She's no different than I am. I mean, I
mm,
want that too,
mhm,
except I'm in a more difficult world. I can't get out of it. I can't take that cruise and not be on my beeper on my cell
right.
phone. And then all of a sudden we come to that common place that all of us are there for. We just want to enjoy our lives, but some of us are stuck as a CEO. When I say that specifically, they're stuck there and they
Yeah.
can't be anything else. And all of a sudden you realize we're sharing the same story. That's where we connect. That's where we appreciate each other. That's where the smiles will happen. And
Mm,
I think that's where the reports of, hey, you did a great job, will come out without having it to be reported to HR. This person, may they be recorded as doing a great job. No, it's lost. And you
mm,
don't care if it's lost, because, each one of you is smiling. That's what
mm,
we work for,
mm,
the smiles in life.
mhm.
Sorry to be so spiritual here, Linda, but
You don't
not
have
what
to
you want.
apologize to me. No way. I do believe that the reason that any of us go after anything, whether it's, the company that you can flip, or it's the cruise, or whatever those things,
Yeah.
ultimately it's rooted in freedom, usually, and joy. Those two things, I think I I do ultimately think that that is underlying, and that, you know, when you say the CEO is no different from the person expressing their desire to take a rest on a cruise, I think it really comes down to those two things. Yeah.
When you take a deep breath, and each one of us takes a deep breath. The fellow who's working for, like is making $60,000 a year for you in your company, when they take a deep breath of just appreciation of life, they're free, they're quiet, they have no responsibilities. And then you look at the CEO who's making $1 million a year for the same company, and then goes on a vacation and takes that deep breath of recognition of peace. And he's in awe as the $60,000. It's all equal.
Mm-hmm.
We're all people at the very end of the day. We've just gotten involved in the busyness of work. So some people have to think that they have to rule the world, or enjoy their life rather, by making $1 million a year and by having all responsibilities. The other person may be actually even happier and more content, earning 60.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately the deep inhalation of appreciation of life, that $60,000 person or the $1 million person is all the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's an inspiration
Mm-hmm.
of peace. Everyone's peace is the same. Same place we all go for love, same place we all go for peace. I've never actually thought about it this way, Linda. You see, that's why this conversation is good for me.
Indeed. I mean, always whenever I have a interaction like this, or even when I attend a meeting, a local chapter meeting, it's always a few days after, sometimes even a few weeks after, something will occur to me in a very new, different way. And that's like the best part of life, in my opinion. I whenever that's kind of dries up because other things get busy, because I'm just, being efficient, or, spending my time getting things done, it's a much less exciting way to live.
It's the incidentals in life that come to you and realize that they're really the sedentals of life. I wonder why I thought about that. It's 3 days after the National Speakers Association local chapter meeting, and all of a sudden I'm thinking about what someone said. I wonder why. And it's like you say, well, it's just incidental. I mean, it wasn't important because no one brought it up. But that's jokingly speaking, it's a incidental for you. It's important. There's no word, of course, Linda. You realize I'm joking around with incidental and
yes. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Didn't want everyone to stop and say, wait a second here, let's pause this video, this audio, and let's look up incidental. But then and that's the playful part of life also. One of the things that I've realized, someone said that, I met someone, and that person was absolutely lovely, really, really hit it off. And she said, this was a serendipitous meeting. And I say, I don't believe in serendipity. I believe in dippity. Awesome. How boring it is to think that life is just serendipitous. In other words, it's just random.
Yeah.
Random is boring, and it's kind of, I don't want things to be random. I don't necessarily have to think of a supreme being for organizing my life, and there'd be a reason for everything. But wouldn't it be more interesting to wonder about, I wonder if this is all, a pattern, if we're people on the stage, like, actors on the stage in life. Wouldn't it be interesting? You don't have to prove it. Wouldn't it be interesting that that's what's all about? And then go about life thinking about other kinds of interesting possibilities that seem ridiculous. The quote from Einstein, if at first an idea is not absurd, there's no hope for it. And I think that's also funny. Play. We began this conversation that's talking about, I like to play, be respectful. And, look, you can make it in a more formal scientific way. If you think about the most brilliant scientists, they start out with a wonder. I wonder if I could figure out what COVID virus is all about. I wonder, they start out as a playful kind of thing. It's a wonder. Wonder is right brain stuff. It's not scientific. Then they go into their scientific brains to figure out the method and the specificity of proving something. And then they go into aha, right brain again. So it's right brain through the left brain, and the reward is a right brain aha. We are always playing. Some people know how to scientifically play in between so that they get to the goal, but it's ultimately we're wondering, and then we go to an aha. And I think that's very, very important to realize. We must play. We must be creative. That's what we're all about. We must be curious, and we must listen, really, 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 really listen. And we have to be empathetic. I wonder about their story. Could I ever be part of their story? What happens if it happened to me? And I think these are all humbling kinds of approaches. Do I do this every day? I wish I did. But I know where I need to go. That's the point. And then someone can come up to me and say, Steve, I just thought about that. And I have a slightly different way of looking at it. And I'll say to them, beautiful. Never thought of it that way. Isn't that interesting? And we both smile. We both smile and walk away. And hopefully we engage in someone else who will show us life in a slightly different way again. And that's what it is all about.
Right.
Show me differences so I can learn. And then ultimately, in my 10th lifetime, I might actually get to it. And that's kind of
yeah, absolutely.
How beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, indeed. So I have kind of a final question, but I feel like it's redundant's the wrong word, but it's so I'm going to kind of present this, but then also just invite you to say anything else that you want to say before we officially close out of our conversation. And this is a question that it's my intention to ask anyone that I have these conversations with. And it's around, what makes satisfying work. So I feel like you've already said all of these things, but now just asking it a little bit more succinctly. And if it make, you can gather things from what you already said, but what really makes this, and it might be difficult to even separate this from satisfying life, but I feel like some people really do separate these things. What would you have to say to, from your own experience, from like, what have been like the most meaningful, just the things that have been the most satisfying, with the parts of work life that you've really been able to sink your teeth into and get a lot out of?
Yeah, okay. And it's all repetitive, but it's not repetitive because, as you're asking the question, I'm different than I was a moment ago or half an hour ago. So I look at it slightly differently. And that's kind of the fun of life also. You're never the same moment to moment. So what would I think about as having maybe satisfaction in work or satisfaction in life? And the answer is, I look at my smile, or I can't look at my smile in the mirror, but if someone is watching me talk, and they say, Steve, tell me if this were a video and you, Linda, was saying, Steve, tell me about life and what you think is satisfying about it. You would stop me periodically and say, Steve, as you just talked about this or this, I noticed that there was a slight smile on your face. Why were you smiling? And that would be the time that I would say the most wonderful things and most introspective kinds of things, most meaningful things about my conversation with you. So to look for someone's smile, or when we're not doing this because this is audio and not video, to look for the tonalities, the things that touch you about that person's voice. And so I once had come back from a long trip, and it was a committee meeting many, many miles away, and I was away for 3 days, and I came back. And my wife said, how was the committee meeting? I said, well, it was okay. And she said, you mean you left us for 3 days, traveled half across the United States for an okay meeting? And I said, yeah, that's my thing. And she said, but you're not smiling. And I said, well, who smiles? We don't smile anymore. She said, but honey, you've lost your smile. And I said, really? And she said, yes, you used to be a smiling guy, and now you're doing all these wonderful things for the world, but you're coming back no smiles. So I have this idea about how to pick a committee using the SMILE technique. Okay. Now, SMILE is not an acronym. S stands for this and M stands for that. It is, if someone describes a meeting, a committee that they'd like you to join, and after about 30 seconds, you're not smiling, don't pick it. So I would say, Linda, that the idea about how I live my life is from smile to smile to smile. And if someone is looking at me and wondering whether I'm smiling or not, and I'm not, you can say, Steve, how come you're not smiling? And I'm saying, you know what? I should be. And I thank you very much for reminding me that my smile is not there. And this is not smiling for the camera. It is just a simple smile that someone caught me doing, kind of caught me, looking at the sunset and say, hey, you're smiling. And I said, yeah, I wish I were, I wish I were, I wish.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, but tell me about your wish. And it's just there. I just need to calm down. I just need to take a moment in life when I can actually take a breath, and when I don't have responsibilities. Keep on going, Steve. Keep on going. And when I can just hug someone physically or verbally and tell them how beautiful they are and how beautiful life is. Yeah, keep on going, Steve. Keep on going, Steve. And then the smile starts to break out on my face, and then I start to maybe get teary. That's where I need to live.
Mm-hmm.
From one smile to one smile to once more, and maybe just one moment short of a tear. That's it, Linda. That's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that you're smiling, and if you don't know you're smiling, make sure that someone that you're very close to looks for the smiles on your face, and will always tell you that you're smiling and ask you why are you smiling, put you in touch with the kinds of things that really make life precious for you. And with that, I say, I did it. I said it. As a tear is coming out of my face when I'm talking about
Does that mean you went a little too far? No.
Just one, and for all the speakers out there, realize that you want to tell the stories that will touch you, to bring a tear and just bring it back just one moment. And that's where you want to speak to, may I suggest, to touch people emotionally without that tear, because then all of a sudden the audience realizes, oh, this speaker is out of place. This is out of control here. They're weak. Bring it back one moment short of that tear, ladies and gentlemen. And here is Steve Shama, or Linda Stacy.
That's fantastic.
This is lovely. This is lovely.
Yes, yes. So I will be linking, your website, and what would you like people to know about what you're doing in the world in terms of speaking and getting in touch with you? I mean, this is a great conversation in itself, but if people wanted to connect with you further, what would be the best way to do that?
Well, I suppose the best way of doing it is just to go to my website, which is just steveshama.com, www.steve, S-T-E-V, same word, S-H-A-M as in Mary, A.com, and just kind of look at the way things are doing and things, and you can get in touch with me through the website, and we can have a chat. Whether it actually comes to a gig, whatever, it's not important. I love to have a conversation with you, and sometimes I can have a conversation with people, and all of a sudden they say, hey, you know what, I'm going to change the whole idea of my conference because I've just clarified things with you. And by the way, that's one of the important things that I do also. I'm a clarifier. Someone asks a question, I say, why? And I keep on asking why. And all of a sudden they say, well, that's not really the question that I should be asking. I should be asking this question. And I said, bingo. And can you help me with that, Steve? Because that's your area of expertise. I said, no, can't help you with that. But happy to say, I can tell you who can tell you. And so, we're a connector, we're a clarifier. So anytime anyone wants to connect with me, just go to my website, take a look at it. There's a little video of me giving a talk to an audience, which hopefully I tell a touching story there, and happy to have a conversation with anyone at any point in time. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. This has been lovely. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
My pleasure, Linda. Thank you for thinking that this could be a nice hour-long conversation, and it has flown by. And I hope people who are listening feel that we've had a conversation where we've been vulnerable, open, appreciating each other. And I wish that for the rest of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. Thanks, Linda. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. There you have it. Episode 5 is in the books. I want to go back to something that I said in the intro about how Steve lives in his essence. He says in another conversation with me how he likes to focus on how he makes a life and not how he makes a living. And I feel like this goes back to something that I mentioned in an earlier episode around branding and having a personal brand in the workspace. And sometimes when I think of brand, I think of something that's very contrived, created by a bunch of, marketing minds or something like this. And not that there's anything wrong with the ideas behind a traditional branding outlook, but I really feel like branding, when it comes to individuals within a corporate environment, means that what makes you uniquely you, and how this, whether it's related to your personality or even like your values underneath, and who you are to and with other people, that what makes you uniquely you increases your value in the workspace in very subtle but important ways. Do people actually want to be around you? What is your hangout factor? What are the fundamentals of what make you tick that actually increase your abilities inside the workspace? Knowing what this is can help you to have a much more intentional experience of the workspace instead of being in a very reactive mode. And I feel that being in a very reactive mode and not really knowing who you are or what you are in an organization can really lead to a victim mindset. And I believe that some corporate environments do foster a victim environment, a victim, mindset environment. So I think this is a topic that's important to cover, and I will be covering it in a future episode. And I think it's something that people can work on and can think about no matter what type of environment you are in. Who are you at the beginning of a day? How do you want to show up in the workspace? And how are you supporting yourself so that you can show up at your best? It's just something I wanted to leave folks with in terms of really, upping the ante on who you are and where you spend a lot of time at work. Let's be the best version of ourselves at work to the extent that we can. Again, I want to remind, if you have stories or comments or questions, please send them my way. I want to know what's hitting and what's not. You can email me at linda@workdopepod.com. So it's linda@workdope, DOPE, and then pod.com. And until next time, I am signing off for Work Dope. Bye-bye.